would like to call the August 31st, 2022 City Council special meeting to order. Would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Parker.
I am online.
Councilmember Hutchings.
Here.
Ruffridge.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
Carey.
Here.
Chilson.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda? Ms. Hutchings.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
May I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Carey. Are there any changes to the agenda? Are there any council objections to approving the agenda? Seeing and hearing none, the council agenda is approved by unanimous consent. Next item on the agenda is item 3, city clerk candidate interview. And in accordance with AS 44.62.310 C2, if the interview questions or answers turn to a subject that may prejudice the reputation or character of any person, the council may choose to continue the interview in an executive session, as long as the individual being discussed has no objection to the executive session. Next, we will have our city clerk candidate, and I'll start this out by saying I am notorious for mangling people's name. So if I do that, just let me know and we'll try it again. But our interviewee would be Perry Gallucci, and are you on the line now? Ms. Gallucci?
I'm sorry, you would think after all this time with Zoom, we would have it all figured out, but I had to rejoin as a panelist. I'm sorry. So it is Gallucci. Thank you.
Okay, righty. We'll start this out by introducing the people that are here. I am Paul Whitney. I'm the mayor of the city of Soldotna. And to my left is Council Member Linda Hutchings. And to my right will be Council Member Justin Ruffridge and David Carey. On Zoom will be Council Members Dan Nelson, Jordan Chilson, and Vice Mayor Lisa Parker. To the far left will be the HR Director, Jessica O'Regan. Next to me on the left is the interim city clerk, Breck Hewitt. Off to the far right is City Manager Stephanie Queen. And we have one member in the audience, a candidate for city office. So how we'll start this out is we will each have a question or two for you, and we will go kind of a round robin asking those questions, and there could be a follow-up to those questions. So take your time. If you need anything, just let us know, and we'll keep going here. I will be asking the first question, and please take, if I don't lose my voice first, please take a few minutes to tell us about your experience, which prepared you to apply for the Soldotna City Clerk position. Please include what you know about the city of Soldotna, our government structure, and the process.
Okay, so a lot of what I feel I've accomplished, I have put in my cover letter and my supplemental questions, so I apologize if it seems like it's a repeat. I started as the city clerk. I started as 16 and a half hours part-time job. I needed a job in 2009, and the city clerk was getting ready to retire, so she kind of took a liking to me. So they created a full-time position that I split part-time with finance and part-time with the clerk's department, where I trained for 2 years. Mostly, her name was Linda Lyles, mostly with Linda. And then after the 2 years was up, we went through the interview process. 50 people applied for my job, but I was successful and got it. At that time, they took my help away, which was me. So it was only me. So I did the position for 5.5 years on my own. Most of that time was kind of getting my feet wet and trying to just get things done, because it's we have a small town, but it swells to 20,000 possibly, roughly 25,000 in the summer. So we have a small city staff, but with a larger population. So with that comes a, pretty high workload. But during that time, I was at a WMCA conference, which is Washington Municipal Clerks Association, and I came across an agenda packet called iCompass. I started with that, provided council with iPads, and then I moved on to getting a public records portal. I'm not sure how important public records are in Alaska, but Washington and Florida have the most stringent public record laws in the country. So it's pretty something you really have to pay attention to. And then in the meantime with that, I requested a capital improvement project for the council chambers for $50,000 and redid the whole audio visual system. And then I began trying to implement Laserfiche with me on my own and my part-time assistant at that time. And then she became full-time deputy clerk. And I also had the permit tech trying to help me implement the Laserfiche program. And at that time I realized it's just too much of a project. So we provided, I asked for and received a records clerk. And we have been doing citywide implementation. She has done quite a few forms. In the beginning, I was more involved with it than I am now, unfortunately. I still know how to use it, but I'm not really good with the forms or anything because that's her role. So I've built very, very good relationships with the citizens and council, which in my questions I answered. I think that was the most important thing that I have accomplished. When I started, the city clerk's department was viewed more as a secretarial department versus an executive kind of position where we actually really have input and direct things and have the ability to make changes to systems and processes that will make the city run better and more benefit to the citizens. So I have a really good working relationship with staff, the mayors, everyone. There are times when I get irritated with people because you work with them, but overall we get along very, very well. As far as your city, it looks like it's a city manager type of government versus I'm used to a city administrator, council, mayor. But it does look like there's been a change in the process in hiring the city clerk, which used to be administrative. So that's different. I see that you're doing a roughly $4 million riverfront project and also a stadium, building a new stadium as well. Soldotna is a small town. I lived in Alaska for, I wrote 12 years, but actually it was about 11 and a half. And I live in a small town now with about 4,800 people. I grew up in a very small town of 1,200. I like a small town. I've been to Soldotna several times, very long time ago, but I loved it. It was beautiful. I like the centralness of it. Seward is my favorite place in Alaska, but I also like Homer, so it seems pretty central. So,
Okay.
Is that all right?
You're all set? Okay. We'll move on to the Vice Mayor for her questions.
Good morning, Perry, and thank you for joining us this morning. My question is, what is your experience with the election process from the municipal clerk's office perspective?
I have zero experience in the elections process. Chelan County does all of our elections. So I don't have any experience at all in that. I'm sure I could learn, but I have taken in a petition for initiative and referendum. I've done that, but that's it. So
Thank you.
Do you have a second part to that question, Vice Mayor?
No, I do not.
Okay.
Because the follow-up would have been if there had been experience.
Next question will be from Councilmember Hutchings.
Good morning, Perry.
good morning.
What is your experience with Robert's Rules of Order or parliamentary procedure? Would you consider the level of your experience as beginner, intermediate, or expert?
I would say intermediate. I actually just finished a course on the Robert's Rules of Order. I got an A. I did that to fulfill the requirements for my MMC, but I have obviously utilized it all throughout council meetings. I am the person that interrupts the mayor and says, no, we can't do that, or, this, or if somebody shows up, I mean, respectfully, of course, I don't just interrupt him, but or if somebody shows up that tries to utilize the podium to talk about things that they shouldn't, such as elections or when they're running for office or bringing stuff in. I'm the person that kind of controls that. I'm the one asking for a second, making sure I understand the second. We don't do many amended motions. And actually, I have a presentation scheduled for council on how to better utilize Robert's Rules of Orders in our meeting. One of the things would be the approval of the agenda. I like that. So I would say intermediate.
Okay, and a follow-up. Please consider the following question. First, explain the process of a motion to reconsider.
The process of a motion to reconsider, sorry. To reconsider. Okay. I'm sorry, I have to breathe for a minute. I'm a little nervous and I'm kind of sweating. So a motion to reconsider would be where there's already been a motion made, and then somebody else, the motion has passed and passed. Okay, sorry, motion has passed, and then another council member brings it back at a later meeting for a motion to reconsider that motion, I think.
Okay, if a chair is making a parliamentary error during a meeting and you were aware there is an error, how would you handle the problem?
I would raise my hand and say that I felt that there was an error in the parliamentary procedure.
Okay, thank you.
And I would explain what it was that I thought was the error.
Thank you.
The next question will be from Councilmember Nelson.
All right, good morning.
Morning.
Appreciate you joining us today. So question for you. Tell us about a situation you wish you had handled differently based on the outcome. What would you change when you were faced with a similar situation?
Well, I guess I could utilize this. It's pretty minor. We had a breach at the city of Chelan recently, and I am in charge of all of the insurance and the deductibles and everything. And our deductibles hadn't changed for years. And the breach happened naturally on July 3rd at around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I am so sorry. Anyway, I called all of council, the city administrator, the mayor, and explained to them that our deductible was $25,000. And on May 31st, it had changed to $100,000. So I had to call council and the mayor and the city administrator and let them know about my mistake. What I would definitely change about that is I will never, ever talk about what our deductibles are without verifying it, even if I've just done the paperwork. So.
Thank you.
Our next question will be from Councilmember Chilson.
Excellent, thank you. So the question being, while holding a publicly held position, you would be expected to interact with members of boards, commissions, and citizens on a regular basis. What would you need to consider when communicating with these audiences in your official capacity as a clerk?
Mostly to listen to them, to what they're saying. You treat people with respect. Always representing myself in that role as a member of the city and not as a personal citizen. When I have talked on things that I felt personal about, I always say, this is a Perry opinion, not a City of Chelan position. I find that most of Planning Commission calls me for help and assistance with their emails and stuff. Park Board, not too much. But as I said in my supplemental questions, people contact me because I get things done and I help them, and even if people don't have the answer that they want to walk away with, at least if they feel heard, then they walk away feeling something like they walked away with something out of that interaction. I believe that I would need to, I guess part of it would depend on how interactive you believe that the city clerk is, or maybe not believe, but how active the city clerk is with those boards. I mean, as far as us, they call me, but I don't really do anything with planning commission. I mean, I help the planners with the agenda packet because they use iCompass. But I mean, I think part of that would be just being friendly and respectful and hearing people and not ever using my personal opinions as a position for the city of Soldotna.
Okay, thank you. And one follow-up to that. How would you initiate a difficult conversation with a council, board, or commission member, coworker, or member of the public with whom you disagree on an important topic or issue that must be addressed?
Okay, can you repeat that one more time, please?
Certainly. How would you initiate a difficult conversation with a council, board, or commission member, coworker, or a member of the public with whom you disagree with on an important topic or issue that must still be addressed?
I would ask probably most likely for a private meeting, and then talk to them calmly. I'm a pretty calm person, except for in an interview. Talk to them calmly and tell them the situation that I see, tell them my side of it, ask their side of it, and then try to come together. A staff person is a little bit different than council or the mayor, because the council or the mayor is, in the end, they're the boss. That's it. So as we're with a staff member, I had a staff member, my records clerk, she was getting a little out there. And so I brought her in my office and we sat down and we had a meeting and I explained what my issues with her were. Issues is a strong word because she's a really good employee, but now issues with her were, I listened to her side for her to explain it. We talked about it and then we moved on. I'm also the type of person that once something is done and talked about, it's done. We don't bring it up. We don't talk about it again. There's not, you don't need to apologize 47 times kind of thing. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the next question will be from Councilmember Carey.
Good morning. What's the weather like there?
It's hot.
What's the temperature?
It's about, well, today it's supposed to be 100. So.
Oh, it's more than hot. Oh my. Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to say
Yeah.
I was born in Washington State and went to school in Spokane, so I really like Washington State people, and I'm very.
Are you
pleased.
familiar with Chelan then?
Pardon me?
Are you familiar with Chelan?
Just very barely. I was born in Whidbey Island.
Okay,
And
I grew up
so-
in Darrington.
Excellent. Very good. Anyway, I'm pleased that you're interviewing for us. My question, an election will take place in 2 weeks. You discover a discrepancy between the city code and state statute that affects voting procedures. How would you handle that issue?
Well, I would go to, having no elections experience, I'm going to try and wing this. I would go to the city manager as well as the mayor and tell them, I'm not sure, I would assume that Alaska statute would trump municipal code. It does in Washington, but I don't know.
State does.
But I would point it out. I wouldn't just ignore it. I would point it out. Hopefully at that time I would have some experience on how things ran and the way that things went, to have a better input on like a suggestion. I would always try, if I ever see a problem or see a way that something is wrong, I would always try and make a suggestion and not just come in and say, hey, this is a mess. What are we going to do to fix it? Even if my suggestion wouldn't be the best one. I mean, I would never come in just expecting someone to just handle it. But again, having no elections experience, I mean, I would just go to the mayor and the city administrator or city manager and talk with them. I know that's not a good answer, and I'm sorry.
You're doing fine. Thank you very much.
Our next question will be from Councilmember Ruffridge.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning.
Have you ever been given work-related feedback by a supervisor that you had something specific you should work on as an area of improvement?
Patience.
And how did you react to that feedback in the moment? And did that feedback have merit, in your opinion?
Yes, it had merit. Unfortunately, it does. I think quickly, and so it's people don't always process it the same. So Callie, the records clerk girl that I told you I hired, I've done iCompass for so long, it's second nature. And so I forget sometimes that people need a minute to learn it too. So we came up with the code word and she would say, chillax. And I'd start laughing and say, okay, that's perfect. And then kind of back up and be a little more patient. I always welcome feedback. I'm constantly trying to learn, trying to improve. As long as it's not done with malice or spite, I have a hard time with that. I've had, supervisors yell, and I don't do well with that. I had a supervisor, city administrator, break a phone one time. Don't do well with that kind of stuff either, but, positive feedback is, I welcome that.
Thank you.
I have the next question here. Please explain your experience supervising others.
Well, I have a deputy city clerk and I have the records clerk. I believe I'm a very good supervisor. I do allow them to work flex schedules because it fits better in their life. Kelly has a young daughter. Yesterday was her first day of school, so she came in late and left early kind of thing. But she's also the person that I had to sit and have a conversation with, that I have no problem telling her that this is not acceptable and that these things that had happened they were not acceptable. And, that it was a verbal warning. I didn't do a written warning. I feel like the people that I supervise are my team much more, and I treat them that way. I mean, ultimately, everybody knows I'm the supervisor, but I don't run around going, I'm the supervisor. I prefer that we all work on an even level. They're just as smart as me and they can do a lot of what I can do. And they deserve respect for that. And I do, I respect them. We get along very well. We don't really ever, in my department, we don't really have any issues as far as like gossiping or backstabbing or any problems with anyone. So I think that if you treat people with respect and you let them have buy-in and have input on things, and I don't know everything, and so I'm always welcome to, hey, I'm doing it this way. What do you think of that idea? And I'm like, well, that's great. I would never thought of that. Or if I say nope, then I will tell them why I don't think it's a good idea. I don't just say, no, we're not doing it, period. Because people's jobs are really most of their life, unfortunately or fortunately, most of their life. And if they don't feel like they have any control or any buy-in, then they're more put down is a strong word, but I don't feel that they have the freedom to actually be themselves and do the kind of job that they could actually do.
Could you please explain or describe your management style?
I kind of thought I just did. The buzzwords would be inclusive. I'm democratic. I walk around. I'm very friendly with all of staff. I know a lot about their lives and stuff because you work with these people. So I, again, value input. I value respect both ways. I value teamwork. I value ideas.
Okay. We'll move on to the next question. It'll be from Vice Mayor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. Perry, can you tell us about a career goal that you've accomplished and why that was important to you?
My MMC, I just did that recently. So it was a lot of hard work. It was important because there's so much in the clerk world that changes and so many different, the OPMA, as you probably know, changes all the time. Our public records, we have a 3-month webinar every month with the Attorney General's office to go over the new case law regarding public records. And part of all of that was part of getting my MMC as well as my certified public records officer. It was very rewarding after 10 years of being the city clerk to be able to accomplish the work, to be able to do that. And again, I will go back to a lot of that has to do with the team that I have, because while I was doing this other stuff, they were picking up workload. So I'm very, very proud of that. It's a huge deal. And out of almost 15,000 members in IIMC, only about 2,200 people have their MMC. So I think that's a good accomplishment.
Thank you, Perry.
Next question will be from Councilmember Hutchings.
Are you getting tired of questions yet?
No, I'm sweating though. It's kind of a little disconcerting, the Zoom interview, so.
Why do you believe that you are a strong candidate to be the next clerk for the city of Soldotna? And if you were selected for this position, when would you be available to start work?
I think I'm a good candidate because besides the elections experience and probably blowing my Robert's Rules of Order question, I have the experience that you're looking for. I have all, like, when I was looking at the job application, I'm like, check, or the job posting, like, check. I believe I understand the difference in working in a small town versus a city. I believe there's a different type of relationship that goes along with a small town and the citizens as than the, say, like the city of Seattle. You don't run into those people at the grocery store or at the post office or anything. And I think for me personally, one of the things I like about a small town is that you do get the opportunity to know people, you do get to help them. They do learn about you as well as being a person, as well as what you can do in your job to help them. So, and it would probably take me 2 months to pack up, to move to Alaska, and I would have to give notice at my job and give them a little bit of time. So I did write that on my application. I know that's a long time, but I don't feasibly think trying to sell my place and do all of that I could get all that done. So, although houses are going super fast here, and housing does look like an issue in Soldotna.
Thank you.
Next question will be from Councilmember Nelson.
All right. So please explain your process for staying organized when juggling multiple tasks and especially during hectic or stressful periods.
Sticky notes. I am a sticky note freak. That is actually a big way I stay organized. I document everything. I make lists of things. So an organizational tool that I use is, and I noticed that your agenda packets are different. I'm not really sure what software you use. I'm not familiar with Seamless, but we assign agenda bill numbers like to a project. So right now the Wooden Avenue Bridge was a huge deal. And so I started out with the year 2022-001, and then that'll be the first item on the agenda. And then next time it comes, it'll be 2022-001A. And that way I have every single thing together for that project under one agenda bill number. I stay organized with public records. I have WQA, which I have notifications when they're due, when I get a new request, although I do pretty much check the public records portal every day just in case, because it is very, very legal here. People make a lot of money on public records here. Yeah, I sticky note, definitely sticky notes. They make fun of me at work, but when I call in, I can say, it'll be that green sticky note right to the left of my mouse underneath the pink one, and that's where it is. So,
Thank you.
The next question will be from Councilmember Chilson.
So as someone that lives by sticky notes, I completely understand. My desk looks like a collage. My question would be, as a clerk for the city, how would you describe the relationship between yourself and members of the city council regarding that role? Reflecting on your previous years as a city clerk, can you give an example of a difficulty you experienced with that relationship and how it was overcome?
I have been extremely fortunate. I get along with all of council, all of them. I've never had an issue with council. I did have one council member that actually hasn't been a council member for almost 2 years and is still emailing me on ways that I can improve the city council meetings. I just got an email from him last week on a way that I could do the city council meetings better. And I welcome that. I mean, I listen to him. Sometimes he has good ideas. But I've never had a problem with any council. Maybe the respect of their position, maybe that they respect me. But besides Councilmember Dobbs, always trying to make things better. But sometimes would, be a little bit annoying, but he's council and you don't ever tell him that. So
Okay, thank you.
The next question will be from Councilmember Carey.
Thank you. Communicating obviously is something that all of us do, and it's critically important, particularly in the public sector. When you are planning on communicating something, how do you take into account the audience that you're going to be communicating? How do you carefully consider your audience when you communicate?
Well, you think about the level of for instance, I would probably talk to council on a different level than I would talk to a citizen, because council has a different understanding maybe of the process. I always try and talk in layman's terms, so to speak. I think writing class is like, you should basically write for 7th to 8th grade level. I try and keep that in mind. But there are people that you do have communication with, again, as council or the mayor or the city manager, who obviously understand things on a different level. So I think it really depends on who you're talking to and what the purpose is. But you always keep that in the back of your mind. You don't talk to everybody the same, because people don't have the same understanding nor communication skills.
Excellent, thank you.
Our next question will be from Councilmember Ruffridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could you please tell us a time that you had to defend your actions?
Actually, the only time that I can think of off the top of my head of having to defend my actions, as I mentioned, the city administrator that broke the phone when he got mad at me, it's because I returned a phone call to somebody that had been contacting him, the city in general, for several days, and nobody called them back. So I got back to them just to let them know that we would be getting back to them, because people need to know that. They can't just be ignored. It's not fair. And I went in to tell him, because they had called me, and that's why I called them back. And I went in to tell him, and that's when he started swearing at me and beat the phone and broke it. But I explained to him that I just letting them know that somebody was going to get back to them. So I know this is going to sound terrible. I haven't really had to defend anything. Maybe because I always do things on the front end, I'll ask about something, or, hey, we're going to do this. What do you think? Like to the mayor, city administrator, but I have a lot of autonomy. So I'm sorry. That's my answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes the prepared questions we have for you today, and thank you for meeting with us to interview for the position of city clerk. And do you have any questions for us about this opportunity?
I do.
Okay.
I do. I'm going to go round robin. No, I'm just kidding. So what is your view of the role of the city clerk? Do you consider her more executive or secretarial? And do you allow the clerk to manage the department, or is it managed by council or the city manager?
Good question. Under our system right now, you would be under contract to the city council. Of course, you would be working hand in hand with the city manager on issues that involve the entire city. But as far as, I guess we can call it supervisory, the evaluations are done by the city council. And of course, there would be input from others in the administration that may have that needed input.
Okay. And I did note.
Just
go
one
ahead,
second. Vice Mayor Parker, you have something to add?
Yes, I would say, based on the relationship between the clerk's office and city manager and departments, the way that the city of Soldotna operates is in a collaborative, cooperative process. So they're working as a team. While the clerk is independent and works for the council, it is a team, and they work as a team to get things done.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else on the council who would like to add something to that? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, and then I noticed in your agenda packets that this process has changed recently. Is there particular reason for that? Or can you discuss that or not? I just was kind of curious when I was reviewing your council packets.
Can you repeat that? Because I'm not sure I heard the whole thing correctly.
So before, it appears that the city manager was in charge of hiring the city clerk. And in your council packets, it looks like the code was changed to allow that to become a council action. So I was just wondering if that was anything you could talk about, just kind of curious as to why that happened.
About, I'm going to guess 5 or 6 years ago, the city manager, previous city manager, the city clerk was under his control, worked for the city manager. That was changed by council action, like I said, 5, 6 years ago, mainly because I would say that most of the communities in the state of Alaska, the city clerk is an employee under contract to the city councils. And that's the reason it changed. There was a discussion here about, maybe 2 meetings ago to change that back. But the city council decided we wanted to continue the way it's being done now with the city clerk being a contract employee to the city council. And
Okay,
anybody
thank you.
else want to add anything to that?
Okay. And then what value do you place on training?
What about
On
training?
training? What value do you place on training?
Quite a bit. The city clerk is a member of the Alaska Municipal Clerks Association, and they have training every year. We're very supportive of that. That usually now happens in the month of December. Usually, I think it's going to be the first week in December, and we fully support the city clerk and deputy city clerk attending that. Recently, the deputy city clerk came on board, and probably within a couple of weeks was in a training program to help him in his new position. So it's something that everyone in the city looks upon strongly as being something that's always needed and a benefit to not only the employees, but to the city and the community. And would anybody else like, Mr. Carey?
Thank you. You know, although Alaska is a huge state area-wise, we have a very small population. Our city clerks are really important in our community. They're critical people, and by having training and getting together, they get to share the experience. So if there's a collective experience, we've had clerks that, again, in some areas that have been there for a long time, and where others obviously shorter term, but training is a critical important, and certainly there is the formal training, but I would add equally, because of the nature of Alaska, that the one-on-one dialogue with other clerks and sharing of their experience throughout the state is a critical part of training as well.
Would anyone else like to add anything? Okay. Anything else?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So to kind of answer my first part of the question, apparently you do support participation in the Alaska Municipal Clerks Association. At this time, I am a board member of the Washington Municipal Clerks Association on the executive committee. Obviously, I would be in the Alaska Municipal Clerks Association for some time before I tried to do that because no one would know me. But what are your thoughts on that? And I'm also on the conference planning committee, the membership committee. I've been on the legislative and education committee as well. I'm very supportive of the Clerks Association for exactly the reasons that the previous person, I'm sorry, I can't see you because it's small, just said. I think clerks are the best resource for clerks, and nobody knows what a city clerk goes through and really until you're a city clerk. And so I find that to be important. Do you have what is your position, I guess, on further participation than just attending the clerks conference?
We're very supportive of it. The previous city clerk that left here in December of last year was the past president of the Alaska Municipal Clerks Association.
Okay.
Our deputy, or our interim city clerk here, I believe, sits on 2 or 3 different committees for the Municipal Clerks Association.
Okay.
We have always been very supportive of it, and will continue to be supportive of it, and expect. I think we can say we would expect the city clerk to be involved with the Municipal Clerks
Okay.
Association.
what are your views of implementing new software?
Software, I'm going to have to defer that to somebody else. That's not my department. Vice Mayor Parker.
So that would be something in working in collaboration with the city manager and our IT department. I don't know, I know Councilmember Chilson is an IT guy, so maybe you have more, Jordan?
What I would say is a lot of the software systems run by municipalities, any other large agency, typically come with a pretty hefty price tag, as I'm sure you're aware. And we've made quite substantial investments in the long run. So we're not opposed to installing new systems, I would say, as long as there's value in doing so. And that, again, is probably a discussion to best be had with the city manager and IT staff. But I think there's freedom as long as there's value and then what it would bring to the city.
Okay,
And-
thank you.
And I'll kind of defer here for a second to the interim city clerk, and she could probably tell you what kind of programs and software that we're currently working under in that department.
What questions can I answer for you, Perry?
No, I was just wondering about new software and what kind of software you use. I see that you use Laserfiche for some things. Seamless appears to be your agenda packet. And then it looks like you use Adobe for your agenda packet as well. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, we do not use an agenda packet builder. That's done just Word documents.
Okay, and then you FTPM through Adobe or?
Correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then how many public records requests do you get? How important are public records in Alaska? I guess that's where the seamless is in the public records request. So in Washington, as I've mentioned, they're very stringent and I spend a ton of time on public records. So how many do you find that you get? How important does the council place on filling those requests kind of thing?
Very important. And I believe the last request took about 8 to 10 hours to fill, with many hours of emails being provided to the citizens, including approximately 8 hours of video. So it's something that occurs, and it's something that's supported. All information is made available as quickly as possible. Anybody would like to add anything to that? Okay. That answered the
Okay.
question?
It does. And then you've already answered, so you do have an IT department, which is very nice to hear. So I guess the last thing I'm kind of curious about, and maybe this is not the right, but what is involved in the elections process?
I'll defer that question to the city clerk, interim city clerk.
The city conducts its own elections. It does receive support from the borough in regards to equipment and programming that equipment. Our regular elections are more collaborative with the borough because the borough handles the voters pamphlet and borough-wide issues like that. Special elections are handled exclusively through the city, but again with equipment support through the borough. So it's there's a lot of steps to it and a lot to learn, but it's the city has an enormous amount of resources and good tools to work with is from a starting point.
The state of Alaska currently is under a new system called the ranked choice voting, and that does not affect municipal elections, only statewide and national elections here in the state.
Yeah, I guess those are all my questions. I really appreciate the opportunity to interview, and I know how hard it is to get a special meeting together, so thank you all for taking time out of your morning to have this interview with me. I do appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for your time. Right now, the city council will be convening into an executive session to discuss your application and the answers to the questions. And someone would be getting back to you hopefully in the very near future. All right?
Okay, thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you
Bye.
for your
Thank you,
time.
Harry. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. We're back. Back on the next item on the agenda is executive session, the city clerk interview review under AS 44.62.310C2, subjects that tend to prejudice the reputation and character of any person. May I have a motion to enter into executive session?
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Carey.
Mr. Mayor, I move the city council enter into an executive session to discuss a personnel matter in accordance with AS 44.62.310C2. The discussion of the city clerk interview is a subject that may tend to prejudice the reputation or character of an applicant for city employment, therefore may be held in executive session. The applicant to be discussed has elected to have the discussion take place in executive session. The executive session will include yourself, Mayor Whitney, city council members, the Human Resource Director O'Regan, interim city clerk Hewitt may be included when council requests her presence.
May I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Hutchings. We will go into executive session at this point in time. I'm sorry? Oh. Okay. Call for the roll then. Are there any objections to convening into executive session? Seeing none, then you want that done now?
Needs to be read.
Okay. I think Vice Mayor Parker had to exit this meeting because she had another meeting that was going to start within the next 10 minutes. So I believe she is off the Zoom at this point in time. Yes, so it'll just be the members that are currently here. And once the council returns from the executive session, a motion may potentially be made giving direction on the next step in the city clerk recruitment process. For those attending through Zoom, the Zoom meeting will be resumed after the executive session. After the executive session is over, the meeting will also briefly resume at soldotna.org/streaming. And are there any objections to entering into executive session?
Vice Mayor, or Mayor Whitney, this is Lisa. I will be joining the executive session.
Okay. Are there any objections? Seeing none, by unanimous consent, we will go into executive session. Yeah. May I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Carey. Are there any objections to convening back into regular session? Seeing none and hearing none, we are back into regular session with no objections. Do we have a motion? Ms. Hutchings.
Upon completion of the successful background check, and the mayor is then authorized to enter into a contract negotiations with the candidate.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Thank you. Any discussion? Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's always good to do interviews, and again, we had our set questions that we each were assigned, and we asked, and I was very impressed at the end when we asked her, the individual, if she had any questions for us. She wanted to know if she would be able to continue the extensive work that she's done on a statewide level with other clerks and the association when she came here. And I think that speaks very well of her willingness to share her knowledge and her wisdom that she has gained with those of us here in Alaska. And I think it speaks very well to her that that was a question she had for us, that she wanted to continue that level of work. And so again, I was very impressed. And again, assuming everything works out, I think the state, but most importantly, the people of Soldotna will benefit from this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Call for the roll.
Councilmember Hutchings,
Yes.
Ruffridge,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes?
Chilson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Parker.
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes.
The motion to offer make a tentative offer to Perry Galucci is passed on a 6-0 vote. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is meeting announcements. September 1st, 2022, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board meeting at 5:30 p.m. September 7th, 2022, Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, 5:30 p.m. September 14th, 2022, City Council meeting at 6 p.m. Seeing nothing further on our agenda, the meeting is adjourned.